Okay, Be'ezrat Hashem. So now we're starting B'Sha'at Tova, the fourth perek. And obviously, according to the Malbim, it's a continuation of the third prophecy that Shlomo HaMelech had, which is the prophecy where he was able to retain the highest level of spirituality and prophetic download within a physical experience of the body. And we will see now that basically we're praising Shlomo HaMelech, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Neshama to the Nefesh. If you recall the different versions, yeah, we'll start praising the experience and dive into the reasoning of what allowed Shlomo HaMelech or the Nefesh to become who he became, but also the positive outcome that this connection yielded in Shlomo's life. Okay? So we're starting Perek Dalet, Pasuk Aleph. Hinach yafa ra'ayati, hinach yafa. How beautiful you are, my beloved, my darling. Hinach yafa, how beautiful you are. Enayich yonim, you have the eyes of the dove. We've seen this same pasuk or the same formula of words in the first perek. If you recall, I think it's pasuk Yud Zayin, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see.
Yeah, hinach yafa enayich yonim. Ted Zayin.
Yeah, Ted Vav. Yeah,
Ted Vav.
Hinach yafa ra'ayati, hinach yafa enayich yonim. Right?
Yep.
Miba'ad letzammatech. Behind letzammatech is your veil, but tzama is also a braid. And we will see that there are two understandings to that word. Sarech, your hair, ke'eder ha'izim, is like the flock of goats, shegalshu mehar Gilad, that are coming down from the Mount of Gilad. Okay. So we're going to start with the Gaon. We know that the Gaon in that pasuk previously addressed the repetition of Inach Yafa Ra'ayati. You are beautiful, my darling. He says, because you are my darling. Right? Hinach Yafa, you are beautiful by yourself. So if you recall, basically HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Neshama to the Nefesh, is basically praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Knesset Israel, right? This accomplishment from two reasons. Reason number one, because you are my beloved one. So the connection that we have together makes you beautiful in my eyes, makes you important to me. And we know that the To'ar Yafeh is Yafa, right? Is the highest title statement we can make. We addressed it in the past a few times, right? Like we see in Emet ve'yatziv, ve'nachon ve'kayam ve'yashar. How do we finish? Ve'tov ve'yafeh. So Hinach Yafa, highest praise. Ra'ayati is my beloved. What does that mean? What makes you beautiful is your dedication to me and me to you. But that's not where it stops. Hinach yafa. And you within yourself, you're beautiful for who you are from inside. Not only because we are connected, but also because of your essence, because of your accomplishment, because of your potential, because of your determination. Also in Yafa, you are beautiful, Ra'ayati, my beloved one. And what made you my beloved one? The undivided love, attention, and dedication Am Yisrael throughout history. Yechus, Zechut Avot. That makes us so close that since Avraham Avinu, we've been one and we never separated. So that's also implied in Ra'ayati. Inach Yafa, but you're also beautiful, again, for who you are. Enayich Yonim. Says the doves never leave from their side their beloved one. They always look at each other constantly. It's the two eyes are always focused at each other. The male and the female always look at each other. And he says, and this is what allows them to be always so, loving birds, right? That's what brings them together, is that they don't lose sight of each other. So the same way, says the Gaon, your eyes are both focused on me. The Nefesh, the Neshama, Knesset Israel are constantly connected through the sight to their responsibilities, through their accomplishments, through the cherishing of the values that were passed on, the legacies towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And says the Gaon, and we're not going to go into too much, but he says, Shlomo HaMelech also stresses this point when he chooses the word hinach. Why? He says that if there is a way in Gematriot to break down the alphabet, the Aleph Bet, where the Aleph, should I go into it? Okay. The Aleph and the Tet are matching, the Bet and the Chet are matching, Gimel and Zayin are matching, Dalet and Vav matching. Which one doesn't have a match? Hey. If you do the same thing from Yud to Kuf, you will find that the Nun is the middle one. Okay? And the Chaf also. So he says, Hinach are three letters that do not have, right? The Kaf Sofit, obviously, they're not, do not have a matching letter. So he says, when he says Hinach Yafa, to me, you are unmatched. There's nobody that can be compared to you, and there is nobody that can replace you. Why? Because of the dedication you constantly show me. So here Shlomo HaMelech is telling us that the continuous connection we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the fact that we constantly dedicating ourselves and our legacy to Hashem by the values, by the midah, the Torah, our personal accomplishments, that dedication from those two different aspects of who we are makes it that to the HaKadosh Baruch Hu we are Yafeh. we are the most valuable, we are the most cherishable, and we become ra'ayati. We become the beloved one, the darling one. And the beloved and darling one implies in it what? Showering of beracha, showering of love, attention, protection, going out of my way to make sure that my beloved one has everything, sacrificing. And within all those different behaviors or from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're going to find chesed, we're going to find judgment, we're going to find nisim, niflaot, we're going to find rahamim. The Yud Gimel Midot that Hashem brings upon us are the byproducts of the title that is called Ra'ayati, that comes from the dual dedication we show and we express to Hashem in our lives, as a community and a people, but also as an individual. And he says, one of the ways this happens, after he's established what keeps us so close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and what is the secret of the abundance of blessing that is showered upon Am Yisrael and a person, that's in Ra'ayati Nachefa. He says, you know what? Enayich yonim, right? And miba'ad letzamatech, behind, or the veil, and the veil represents the body, the midot, the desires, right? That's the veil that's separating us from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from clarity, the challenges, the fears, the distractions. That's the veil. So behind that veil, we have those eyes that no matter what, are still focused. No matter what challenges we face, we don't take our eyes off the ball, like they say. But he says, "Miba'ad letzamatech" can also represent something else. Says the Gaon, the tzama, like he says, is braids, right? Braids. So what happens? He says, to make a braid, you take the hair from the front, take them back, take the hair that sits right in the back of the hair, gather everything, and you tie it together. So all those hairs that are very all separated, right? Like Chachamim say, if you have two hairs coming out from one root, the person dies. It becomes blind. So each hair has its own root. So here we take all the hairs from the front and from the back, the ones we see, the ones we don't see, bringing it all together and braid it to make it one. Says the Gaon Mivilna, the tzammatech, this consolidation represents the achdut, the unity of Am Yisrael. But there is something that is extremely important. He says the back represents the Nevi'im. The hair that are in the back represents the Nevi'im, the prophets. That's from a Kabbalistic outlook. The hair that are in the back are the hair that cover the oref. The oref is the neck in the back, right? That's the hair that cover it. And we know that this is the challenge of Am Yisrael. Am keshe oref, right? We have a stiff neck. Oref is also the letters paro. Oref, paro. So how did Hashem take care of paro? How did Hashem?
Stubborn.
He sent the Navi, Moshe Rabbeinu. How did Hashem handle all the stubbornness of Am Yisrael throughout history? Through the Nevi'im, right? that came and proclaimed or announced that Hashem was about to do something if Am Yisrael don't change. So these are the ones that actually cover up the stiffness and the stubbornness of Am Yisrael. But it says the Gaon Vilna, the front hair are the Talmidei Chachamim. These are the ones that are actually used, that are seen. These are the ones that are in front. These are the ones that are leading. It's the Torah and the Talmidei Chachamim. Says the Gaon Vilna, when you take the hair and you braid the hair together, you take all Am Yisrael, right? You take all the different sources, and we will see of wisdom, and we'll get to that in the Malbim, Be'ezrat Hashem, but he says you're taking all this and putting it all together. So who's on top? Who's sitting on top of each other? The Talmid Chacham, the hair of the front, right? When you put it back, it sits on top of the hair from the back, right? And then we braid it. He says the sod, the secret of the Nevi'im was the Torah Kedusha and the Talmidei Chachamim. That's what the Chachamim say in the Gemara, Chacham Adif Minavi. If you have a Chacham and you have a prophet, the Chacham is more, and we discussed it, why? Because the Navi receives information and conveys it. The Chacham, he sees the information at all time, right? From the Chacham can foresee what's about to happen. So the secret of the Nevi'im, the Beracha of the Nevi'im came from the wisdom of the Talmidei Chachamim. That's what always sits on top. And this was the source that appeased the anger, if you will, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, coming from the stubborn behavior of Am Yisrael, which is the stiff neck. So what we are seeing here is that you know how you became throughout history such a beautiful person, how you became Marayati, because your eyes were always focused on me. You know why your eyes were always focused on me? Because you prevailed Torah and Torah and Talmidei Chachamim above all. This is the leaders of Am Yisrael throughout history, and it's only through that you were able to consolidate and grow that terminology, that title of beloved and darling. And they are ke'eder sa'arech. Now, sa'arech, your hair. Ke'eder ha'izim. They are the flock of goats. Goats, when they walk together, they stick together. They don't spread. They are one on top of the other. He says this is how Talmidei Chachamim survive. This is how Talmidei Chachamim are able to influence, because they learn from each other, they stick together, they keep everyone around them. Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam. The Talmidei Chachamim are not just there to absorb the Torah and keep it for themselves. They learn and teach that Torah, like we said at the end of the third perek, in order to bring people closer, in order to keep the he'eder, the flock, tight, just like the goats. And these shegaleshu mehar Gilad, they come down from the mount of Gilad, like the flock that come down from the Har of Gilad. It's parallel to Har Sinai, like the flock, like all this wisdom of Torah, this block of Torah that came down from Har Sinai. Why did Shlomo use Gilad and not Sinai? Because Gilad, if you go to the Torah, okay, that's where Bnei Reuven, okay, and Bnei Gad, and the half of Bnei Shevet Menashe had a lot of flocks, and they had a lot of animals, and that's the mound that was very rich in herbs and vegetation to feed and accommodate this humongous amount of flocks. So it's a source of beracha, and it's a source of Torah. So, and this is what it means. Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai, umsara liYehoshua veYehoshua leNevi'im. So comes the Gaon Mivilna and says that the first step, the first fundamental pillar to keep and cherish the title of beloved with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which yields tremendous beracha, is to have a proper understanding and valor of Talmidei Chachamim and the Torah. And how do I choose the Talmidei Chachamim? How do I see that the Talmidei Chachamim are doing their job? Is when they keep things tight. Is when they are able to convey the Torah and bring the people together like a braid. This is the secret, the first pillar, the first fundamental pillar that granted us the title of Raya, of beloved. And he says, and when you look at it, the Enaim, who are Enaim? Who are the eyes of the people? The Nevi'im, the Talmidei Chachamim, right? The Nevi'im. The Se'ar represents wisdom. Who are the Se'ar? The Talmidei Chachamim. When everybody is together, he says, you take the hair from the front. If they come down and you don't take them back, they blur your vision. Talmidei Chachamim, I'm not there to be alone and sitting in front of a person. No, they are here to be in the back with everybody, overlooking everyone and consolidating the entire hair of their head. This is the place of the Talmidei Chachamim, even though they sit in the front. He says that's how you benefit from now a clearer vision. And this is the position of the Nevi'im and the position of the Tzaddikim that have the ability to foresee and now find the proper direction and stay clear of what your the responsibility is. That's according to the Gaon Vilna. Until now, clear?
Yes.
Very good. I think from a Musar perspective, Shlomo HaMelech is basically telling us that if we are not clear in the hierarchy of chashivut, of importance, then we fail in being the raya, in being the cherished, the darling one, the beloved one, which basically shuts down the showering of all
Beracha.
the beracha that's coming with that title.
What do you mean by chashivut?
Importance. Look, if it sounds simple what he's saying, but it's very Kabbalistic. Okay? It's very, very Kabbalistic. Because here we're talking about the lady. We're not talking about the man, right? We're talking about the lady. Or we're talking about the Nazir. The lady represents the Binah. The Binah is the wisdom. The wisdom. Okay? Not the knowledge. The Binah is, when I say wisdom, I mean analytical wisdom, yeah? And from there grows, from that point on, comes all the ability to take advantage of the chokhmah. If you have tremendous information, you don't know what to do with it, it's not going to help. It's only once you know what to do with the information that the information becomes valuable. This is the wife. The wife, basically, we are the potential, and the woman is the mold, right? That will help this our potential become a reality. So from the hair, and this is why, according to the Torah, women have long hair, right? We allow. Why men? We say no, you don't have to have. Maybe we should have said the opposite. Women shave your head, and men have long hair. Because the hair of the woman represents that message to humanity, but essentially also to men. For that specific reason also, Se'ar Isha Erva. This is why the hair of the woman, of a wife, is so private to who? To her husband. Meaning, to each wife shows a different potential that is dedicated to bring the support to her husband. Yeah. And if you confuse and you learn, you take a mold that's not yours, then you start drifting and going in the wrong direction. And now you lose your own potential because you're trying to fit your potential in the mold that's not yours. For this reason, there is also the issue of Eshet Ish. A woman cannot, that is dedicated to her husband, she's asura to somebody else. So from here we learn that there are a lot of messages behind the fact that according to the Torah, a woman should have long hair, number one, that her hair are dedicated to her husband, number two, and number three, the issur of having one man trying, to be loved or trying to use the mold of another woman for his own potential. All this you learn just from the hair of a woman. That's what we learn from the Gaon Mivilna on this pasuk. The Malbim says he says that Inach Yafa Ra'ayati Inach Yafa also it represents the two eyes of a bird, of the dove. In Yonim you have the eyes of the dove. Because you are beautiful and you are cherishable to me for two reasons. Because number one, you value your neshama, and number two, you look for me in nature. The Malbim uses a different approach than the Gaon. He says it's by being in touch with who you really are, and by looking for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and understanding the dynamic you have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through nature, that you bring together these two essences and open the channel of the concept of Raya. Different than the Gaon Vilna. And he says, Mibad letzam mater. He says, and this happens how? Mibad me'achore, behind the kesher, behind the knots of the braid that basically is binding you and holding you to the body. That's the experience of Shlomo HaMelech. He's able to be in super sync with his neshama. He's able to read clearly HaKadosh Baruch Hu in nature, even though he's tied to what? To the body, the hair. And here the Malbim wants to say that Sa'arer is the body, is the heaviness of the body. However, says the Malbim, according to Kabbalah, he said, well, first, he says physically, the hair and the teeth grow from the minerals that the body needs to reject, but cannot reject through the digestive system. And that's what makes the teeth consolidate itself and the hair grow. He says, as we get older, we start losing hair and losing teeth. The teeth become frail. Why? Because the body doesn't have any more, it does not retain those minerals inside the body and cannot actually dive into dissecting those minerals as good as they did, as the body did when it was young. So for that reason, it just gets lost in the process. But when your body is strong and very functional, it will retain some minerals, even though they're not good for the actual organs, and it will be sent to the teeth and the hair. He says, when we see this in biology, in physics, whatever, in biology, he says from here we learn something, the Chachmei Kabbalah learn something, that spiritually also, all that, everything that you absorb in your Torah, everything you absorb in your mahshava, in your thoughts, will come out one way or another. And we will see the difference between the hair and the teeth. But he says the hair grow on the head, essentially. That's when we talk about hair, we're talking about the hair of the head, which are if you will, the fumes, right? The byproduct of the brain. And each hair is another vehicle of a thought of the neshama. So we have millions of hairs, and to show us that the thoughts are very thin, they're very unique, not one thought is like the other, and they keep on growing, they keep on coming out. Where the teeth will, and we will see what it represents, just consolidate themselves, are much stiffer. For example, he says there are 32 channels of Chokhmah, right? And that's the teeth. That's the teeth that we have. Where the hair is just ideas. So you have Chokhmah, which are the teeth, ideas, which are the hair. Ideas, they're very frail, right? They go in every direction. The teeth are very stiff. Those are the channels of Chokhmah. So says the Malbim, based on that, the Shlomo HaMelech, what did he do? He was able to take the body that brings out, right, rejection, which is called the hair, yeah, and use it to bring out instead ideas of Torah, thoughts, and consolidate his 32 channels of Chokhmah, which is the next pasuk. Shinayich ke'eder ha'ketzubot. We will see that the second pasuk is talking about the teeth, right? So here, indirectly, Shlomo HaMelech is referring to Atzei Levanon, the 32 channels of Chokhmah and the 50 gates of Binah. So he says here, this is what Shlomo HaMelech was able to do. Instead of being under the submissive to the influence of the hair and the teeth, which represent the heaviness of the body, the rejection of the body, he went ahead with me. He went ahead and used that and turned this into wisdom and chokhmah, into ideas and chokhmah. So according to the Malbim, the se'arot, the hair, ke'eder ha'izim, he says, the flock of the goats that coming down from the Gilad, says the Malbim, are all those different thoughts, like the goats, when they come down and they're all together, but each one is different from the other. There's not one goat that look the same. They're very tight they're on top of each other. But when you individually look at each one is different. Shlomo HaMelech was able to identify every thought, every idea, understood it thoroughly, and let it grow of its own. Obviously, what the Malbim is telling us is a tremendous level of accomplishment. Yeah, because we have millions of thoughts every day. But it's through the channeling, the control of those thoughts, and the use of the channels of Chokhmah that Shlomo HaMelech was able to coexist spiritually and physically at such a high level. Meaning, even the insignificant aspect of his essence became significant. This is what it means when it says "Sarech ke'eder ha'izim shegaleshu mehar Gilad." It says that there was a tremendous awareness and focus and protection. Now, it's almost repetitive to what we've seen at the end of the third parent, right? We said how important it is to protect the Kodesh Kodashim, right? And that we don't let anybody go in, just like the Kohen Gadol. Well, how did he do that? By controlling to his own level every thought, every idea. Not allow the brain to wander and get lost. This is how he was able to keep that braid together, to keep the body and the neshama together, and have this coexistence in such a high spiritual level. What do we learn from this Malbim? That the more you are aware and in control of your thoughts, the more you control your body.
Is that through what you allow yourself to absorb, what you put in front of yourself?
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Because that precedes the thoughts.
Yes, but for example, the answer is yes. But sometimes, you start somewhere, you end up somewhere else, right?
For sure.
So here he's for sure what you're saying is true, but he's that's one layer of protection and control. But he's talking about something that's much deeper. That every thought, every idea was identified as something unique. So
not just passerbys.
Correct. Which means that the level of awareness and attention of every thought and every idea was so sensitive, so powerful, that it allowed him to be in full control of his body and allow the highest level of nevuah and spirituality exist and control the body. Now, that's Shlomo HaMelech. But the indication is clear. By adopting a behavior along those lines or in that direction, you end up imposing spirituality over the body and turn physicality into spirituality within your physical essence.
By focusing on as many thoughts as possible?
Not by focusing on them, by identifying them, understanding what it is.
Processing them.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and now from psychological perspectives, it makes a lot of sense. Because if your entire focus is in your brain and in your thoughts, then the needs of the body becomes secondary, right? When does the Yetzer Hara kicks in the most? When you have nothing to think about.
Right.
Huh?
When the thoughts are blank.
Yeah, when you're bored. You don't have an obligation, you don't have where to go, that's what it's yeah. And it's when you're bored and things, then the body takes over. So the more we educate ourselves to be focused on our thoughts, even though these are thoughts, they're just ideas, right? You have an idea, okay, great idea. If you think you can bring it to fruition, it becomes something you focus on. If not, destroy it. Yeah. And how many ideas come through our head? Millions. If you give the proper attention and you're able to label, to each their own level, to label every thought, you start living in your spiritual essence. And then there's a complete disconnect to the body. That doesn't mean the body doesn't exist. But the body exists. But the focus is on the brain. And this, according to the Malbim, is one praise, the first praise the Akadosh Baruch Hu tells Shlomo HaMelech, tells the Neshama. This was a great accomplishment. That's the first fundamental pillar to retain spirituality and connection with Akadosh Baruch Hu. So I think we're gonna stop here for the first shiur, for the first pasuk.
I think I have to rewatch this.
No, you know what's funny? Sometimes when like we're going through it, it's processing, but and then now it's like sinking in more. Like as I'm thinking about it, I'm understanding it even more. Like as I'm thinking about the whole idea of processing each thought, it goes back to what you were saying before we started recording about the Rambam and understanding your flaws and that being your potential, because every thought, if it's a negative thought, it tells you where an area you need to correct or needs attention. Every good thought is something that you're on the right track that needs to be furthered and fostered and everything. So it's very much in that same vein that you think about processing the thoughts.
Yes, on a much higher level. Yes.
Yeah, but that's Shlomo HaMelech, right? I'm trying to bring it down to,
Yeah, no,
the
absolutely. It's all point of references to your core essence and understand your path.
And it's awareness, right?
Yes, it's all about awareness.
But and then it goes back to some of the other stuff that we learned about building that awareness of the truth, which is it's a muscle that needs to be worked, and you need to put in the time in order to have the awareness. It's not just like you can wake up and say, I'm going to be more aware today.
Sure. Emet. So here we have the two perspectives. They're complementary at the end when you think about it. Yeah, it's not there's no machloket here. It's just that two different angles, two different approach of the same pasuk with complementary teachings and wisdom. Baruch Hashem. So we spoke about the hair. We learned a lot about the hair and the Kabbalistic approach on very high level of the hair. Yes.
We're still recording, huh?
Yeah. And Lineda next year is we'll talk about the shinayim, the teeth.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Rav. See you.